Islam literally means submitting oneself completely to the will of Allah. Now, what exactly is this submission? What does it entail? Well, in order to understand it, we need to talk a little bit about the beginnings of Islam, about the Prophet Muhammad, and about the development of the Quran. The Prophet Muhammad was a merchant trader in the city of Mecca. And Mecca was a major metropolitan city. It was a trade hub. And it was also a religious center. The stories go that before the Prophet received his his inspiration by God, there were literally shrines for as many gods as there were days of the year in the city of Mecca. So you could go to a different shrine every single day in Mecca, and and not go to all of them in one year. So it was a major religious center. It was a center of kind of a polytheistic, pagan kind of worship. The Prophet Muhammad was a very introspective man, and he would often go up into the mountains outside of the city of Mecca in order to pray and to meditate. He basically learned how to do a lot of this meditation from a group of Jewish mystics who lived outside of the city, and eventually incorporated this into his own prayer life. And the story goes that one day, and he was in middle age, he went outside of the city and he went into a cave and began to meditate and to pray. And the angel Jibril appeared to him and told him to recite. And the prophet told the angel, "I am not a reciter. I'm not one who can recite." And the angel overwhelmed him in his embrace and said to him again, "Recite." And the prophet said, "No, I cannot do that." And the angel overwhelmed him again and said, "Recite." And the prophet began to recite the first surahs, or the first verses of the Quran. The Quran is the Muslim holy book. It is written in verse, and it's composed of surahs, or chapters. The surahs are basically moments of inspiration that the Prophet Muhammad received. The Prophet would go into a kind of a trance and start simply saying the words of the Quran in beautiful, poetic Arabic. And the Prophet's followers, friends, would write down as much of what the Prophet said as they possibly could, and try to get it as closely as possible. And it was written on all kinds of different things, pieces of parchment, bone, etc. A prophet received these kinds of visions over the course of about 20 years, and he became well known as a religious leader as well as a municipal leader. And the Quran basically, a couple of things you need to know about it. First, Muslims believe that the Quran was not written in any real sense by the Prophet Muhammad. The Quran was received by the Prophet. The Quran is literally the words of God that were given to the Prophet Muhammad, that he spoke as a kind of a conduit. And so the Quran is literally believed to be the inerrant words of God written there right on that page. So when you're reading the Quran, you're reading the words of Allah Himself. For this reason, most Muslims will not try to translate the Quran. Translations are considered interpretations of the Quran because translating the Quran kind of takes it out of its original, and you don't have the same kind of impact that the Arabic does. So most Muslims will try to learn the Quran as much as they can, try to be able to recite verses of the Quran, And the Quran gives them a number of, you know, basically the Quran does a number of things. It tells a lot of stories that are also told within the Jewish and Christian scriptures with slight twists to them, slight differences from what you might see in the Jewish or Christian scriptures. It also talks about how to live life and how to fully submit oneself to Yahweh, or to Allah, sorry. Um, so how does one fully submit oneself to Allah? First and foremost, it's by worshiping Allah and Allah alone. You cannot worship anything else in your life other than Allah. And so the first, a lot of people call them pillars of Islam, is the Shahada. There is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his prophet. Basically what the Shahada is saying is that there is only one God, and that there's only one, proper place for worship. That you shouldn't be worshiping anything other than Allah. And that the words that the Prophet Muhammad give in the Quran and in his own teaching and his own preaching are reliable, and that they're a way to get at Allah, and to worship Him. The second is daily prayer. That prayer must be done at least 5 times per day at prescribed times. And the prayer, this prayer is called the Salat. The Salat, if you actually watch the prayer, and I actually encourage you, if you go on YouTube and type in Salat, S-A-L-A-T, you find a couple of videos of Salat being performed. Salat is performed by a total prostration of the body. You get down on your knees, then you touch your forehead to the ground, literally bowing before Yahweh, or before Allah. And so it's this total prostration, this total bowing of oneself before Allah, that it's not me who's in charge, it's Allah who's in charge, and that I need to devote my entire being to Allah. There's a great story about Allah giving the Prophet Muhammad his the Salat. The story goes that the Prophet Muhammad, according to Muslim belief, ascended into heaven on the Miraj, or the night journey. And he ascended in through the heavens. He saw all of the previous prophets, people like Moses and Jesus. Yes, Jesus is a prophet within Islam. Adam, Abraham, etc. And he eventually comes into the presence of Allah himself. And Allah tells him that he needs to instruct the people to pray. I can't remember the exact number, but it's thousands of times each day. And so the prophet goes down and he speaks with Moses, and he says, Allah said we need to pray thousands of times each day. And Moses said, no, I know these people. That's not going to happen. Go up there and tell them to come down a little bit on that. And so over time, Allah comes down to 500, and then to 100, and then to 50, and then to 10, and then eventually to 5. Each time with the prophet coming down and telling Moses, okay, he's down to 500 now, and Moses saying, no, I know these people, they're not going to pray that much. And eventually they get to 5. The prophet comes down and he tells Moses, Allah has given us 5. And Moses says, I know these people, they are not going to pray that much. And the prophet says, I cannot go up and ask him for more. And so that's why Muslims will pray 5 times each day. It's an amazing prayer too. It's when the prayer call comes on in a predominantly Muslim country, you'll see literally all of life stop, for a good 15 minutes for prayer. And it's an incredible thing to witness. The third pillar of Islam is charity. That one should always give part of their assets and their net worth to those who are in need. The Quran specifically says that you should give at least 2.25% of your net worth each year to those who are the neediest. This is called zakat, and what it means is that wealth within the Muslim community is not ideally not hoarded by the very rich, but it's passed down, and the poor are given something to of their own. It's kind of a form of social welfare that was being done within the Muslim world before it was being done many other places. The fourth pillar is a fast during the month of Ramadan. Islam works based on a lunar calendar, and so that the month of Ramadan can fall pretty much any time during the year, from high summer to the dead of winter. The Ramadan fast is a fast for the entire 29 days of the month of Ramadan, and it's a fast from sunrise to sunset. If you're fasting, and everybody who's physically able to must fast, you have to basically eat and drink nothing. No food, no drink,